So good morning and welcome to our fourth annual Next Breakfast. Typically, we would all be gathered having breakfast together, but as we all know, this year has been a bit different. So hopefully everyone has some coffee or tea in hand, maybe something to snack on as we kick off the morning together. My name is Amber Turner. I'm an interior designer at Bora Architecture and Interiors and currently serving as your IIDA Oregon Chapter President-elect. Our chapter is really excited about the continued growth of Next. Over the past 3 years, we've set goals to increase our attendance, reach new audiences outside the interior design industry, and support our students through membership giveaways. Though this year has been different in many ways, these goals to elevate Next have not changed, and we're still striving to expand our reach more every year. This morning, I'm really excited to hear from our 3 guest speakers as they take us on a journey through the art of storytelling. But before we kick off the event, I want to take a moment to thank all of our event sponsors for Next. Thank you to our virtual kickoff sponsor, Arya Design Collective. Thank you to our intermission sponsor, Spec Systems. A big thank you to our speaker sponsors, Cambria, Carl Hansen and Son, Bora Architecture and Interiors, and Made Studio. Next, I'd like to thank our Ruby level sponsor, Solus. Thank you to our virtual table sponsors, Arizona Tile, McGrory Glass, Mohawk Group, Pacific Mat, and Thompson Tile and Stone. Thank you to our Sapphire level sponsor, Knoll Furniture, and thanks to our Topaz level sponsor, Garrison and Associates. And finally, thank you to our student membership sponsors, Armstrong Flooring and Orange Thread. Because of these sponsorships, we're able to further support our students by giving away 2 student memberships, the winners of which will be announced on social media after the event. Next, I would like to thank our 2021 annual sponsors. A big thank you to our platinum level sponsors, GBD Architects, Mohawk Group, Source, and ZGF Architects. And at the Cobalt level, thank you to Absolute Procurement and Bora Architecture and Interiors. Thank you to all of our annual sponsors. We can't thank you enough for your continued support and are really excited that many of you are joining us this morning. If you didn't see your name on that last slide, our annual sponsorship drive is still open through the end of February. Our sponsorship team has been hard at work to revamp our offerings and provide benefits that will be most valuable to you and your company during these turbulent times. If you're interested in becoming an annual sponsor or have any questions regarding sponsorship, please don't hesitate to ask myself or our current VP of Sponsorship, Allie Raymond, any questions. In the spirit of storytelling, our theme, we also have a poet in attendance this morning who will be listening to the presentations and penning a poem that captures the essence of the event. After the Q&A session, she will perform the poem live, so stick around for that. All right. At this time, I would like to welcome our kickoff sponsor, Denise Terrell Aubin, founder of Arya Design Collective, to share a few words to kick off our morning. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning. Hi, guys. Welcome, everyone, to the IIDA Oregon Chapter Next keynote speaker series. I'm so excited to be introducing or kicking this off. I am Denise Terrell, of course, with Arya Design Collective, past IIDA president. I'm really honored to kick this off because it's a very appropriate subject, storytelling. Stories shape our lives and how we reflect as well as how we look to the future. I know we're all looking forward to the future when we can be closer to our peers and share experiences in close proximity. The stories that we're crafting today will be told for generations. So for now, let's learn more about storytelling so that we all can make really great stories. Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. That was great. All right, now before we meet our speakers, we want to provide you all with an opportunity to wake up a little and socialize with some of your virtual table sponsors. So we'll be sending you all into breakout rooms where your virtual table host has some thought starters ready. These will also be broadcast into your breakout rooms. Towards the end of your time, you'll see a countdown that'll let you know you're about to be brought back to the main session. So you'll know to wrap up your conversations. Okay, with that said, we're gonna send you off and welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone got some time to socialize, enjoyed some seeing some people you haven't gotten to see in a while, and are hopefully a little bit more awake and ready to dig into our topic of storytelling. So with that said, I would like to invite our VP of Membership, Laura Saracen, to introduce our guests that we'll be hearing from this morning. Hi, Laura.
Well, good morning, everyone. So when the planning committee started thinking about storytelling as a theme for this year's event, we wanted to learn more about what makes a powerful story. And one of those points is authenticity. From attending one of our first speakers workshops, a committee member thought of Diana Williams. Throughout her career in sales and training and consulting, Diana appreciates the need for an open and curious mind, an authentic voice, a kind heart, and the skill to connect easily with others. She is a senior sales enablement consultant supporting new business development efforts for North American Steelcase dealers. And a special thank you to Cambria for sponsoring Diana. Our second speaker, I have to admit, hooked me with his company's names. How can you hear names like Electric Coffin and House of Sorcery and not want to learn more? Duffy Diarmus is partner and founder of House of Sorcery and one half of the artist duo Electric Coffin based in Seattle. Our planning committee wanted to learn how to elevate experience with provocative storytelling. This shows in Duffy's portfolio, and he explores ways to push beyond the formal boundaries of art and creativity by approaching the commercial world through an art lens. And Duffy is brought to us thanks to our sponsor, Carl Hansen and Son. Our third speaker is Daesha Ramachandran from Tusk, again, another compelling company name. Daesha is a multiracial daughter of immigrants who has made a life and a living shifting how racism, power, and oppression impact individuals and communities. She's a seasoned facilitator, researcher, author, coach, and strategist who delights in midwiving justice and belonging in organizational life. We wanted to learn from Daesha about how our stories can be crafted from such a place. And a special thank you to Bora Architecture and Interiors for sponsoring Daesha. And last but not least, we have a poet in the house. This is Lisa Ann Markson, founder of Ars Poetica. Her woman-owned, inclusive, and sustainable business model celebrates the multi-talented nature of her artists across entertainment, activists, consulting, and literary landscapes. Her dream, to fulfill the potential that poetry has to enrich every type of experience on and off the page, and always outside the lines. And Lisa Ann is brought to us thank you to our sponsor, Made Studio. And as Amber said, Lisa Ann will be listening in today and will be closing out the event with an original poem. So we can see how the meaning and experience can be enriched by the power of storytelling. And with that, I'd like to introduce and turn the mic over to Diana Williams from Steelcase.
Thank you so much. Do I have control? I do. Can you all hear me okay? While I'm speaking, please feel free to chat up. I want this to be as interactive as possible, and thank you so much for having me. So first of all, I'd like you all to imagine that we are all in one big room together. First of all, just for the pure joy of it. But also, I'd like you to imagine that we're all sitting around and tables, and I know you just had your table chat. So imagine you just finished your table chat, and I'm walking around the room. Thank you, Shannon. Walking around the room, and I've got a mic, and I'm going to be coming up, and I might come up, and I'm going to tap you on the shoulder gently, and I'm going to hand you the mic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to stand up, and I'm going to ask you to share your story with everybody in the room. And what I'm going to do is say, you've got 1 minute. And I'd like you to share your story with the world. And what I'm wondering is how many of you here today could confidently, succinctly share your story in such a way that you would feel you have connected with the rest of the room, and the rest of the room is compelled to be connected to you. You can go ahead and raise your virtual hand, but how many of you feel you could do that? You could share your story in a minute or less that we would want to be connected to you. Good morning. And everybody said, I'm Diana Williams. Today is my 59th birthday. And I'm so excited to be able to kick my birthday off with all of you. I'm really honored. And at this moment in time, right now, I can't tell you how much I completely dig being myself. Now, it wasn't always that way. Like most humans, I'm a work in progress. And my journey to myself hasn't always been where I am today. I am a mom, a woman of faith. I've been a wife multiple times. I'm a mother-in-law, a proud nana. I'm a daughter navigating a daddy with dementia. My journey has been full of this. I am a survivor of multiple victims of violent crime. I love to learn, and I'm passionate about inspiring meaningful change in people's lives every single day. I have a background in interior design, and yet I'm a Steelcase sales enablement person and teacher. My journey is interesting, but we don't have the time, the energy, or the tissues to go into the whole e-ticket ride today. But what we will do is I'm going to give you some tips of how you can share your story. I believe it's critical for us to learn how to share our story for a variety of reasons. One, maybe you want to meet new people, develop new personal relationships, or maybe you want to expand your professional network, or maybe you just want to deepen the relationships you already have. But regardless, I believe we need to learn how to tell our story to create meaningful connections. Because otherwise, relationships are just shallow if we don't get to be able to know our story. And our story is at the root of all other stories. So how do we get to learn to tell our story in an authentic and powerful way? Well, I believe there are three key elements, three key points to telling our story. Be brave, be vulnerable, and be you. So let's look and see. Be brave. Brene Brown, one of my serious girl crush, how many of you just crush on her, Brene Brown? She says that owning our story and loving ourselves through the whole process is one of the bravest things we can do. How many of you agree with that? Like just owning it. But part of the process of owning our story means we have to like dig in, means we have to reflect on our story. I love that. Hannah, I love it. The mess is the message. Amen, sister. Yeah, and absolutely. We have to own the story, but we also means we have to reflect on the story. That means we have to dig in and be in the story. It takes bravery to jump into the story. And being brave doesn't always look like it does in the movies, does it? John Wayne says that courage is being scared and saddling up. Now, I don't know how many of you believe this, but how many of us are so much braver after just the 2020? I mean, what obstacles did we have to face? What fears did we have to face? So I give us just brave points just for surviving 2020. But how many of you feel like saddling up for 2021 is a whole different ballgame? I mean, who knows what technology we'll face or what challenges your clients are going to toss at us in 2021, or what new job requirements might come our way, or for that matter, what new mutations we might face. So I feel like being brave is just almost a job requirement now, or a first world life skill, just to exist, being brave, just to get out of bed every day. So being brave, what does that look like? I think part of it is just like taking a deep breath, taking a big sip of brave and facing the day. But for our story, what does it mean to be brave? I want you to think about a time in your life where you were brave. What did it feel like to be brave? Remember that moment or those moments. What did it feel like in your bones, in your body? And now, how are you being brave now in telling your story, in your designs, with your clients? How are you showing up brave? I would like you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 right now, how you're showing up. 5 being you are just putting yourself out there. You are being brave. And 1 is, yeah, you know, I could, and you don't have to put this in the chat. This is just for you personally. 1 is I could be taking some more risks. I'm not being as brave as I probably could be. And then I want you to note, who are those 5s in your life? Who are those brave people in your life? Note those people, or that one person that is just incredibly brave. And we'll talk about those in a minute. Okay, so brave. All right, so we know we're brave. Now let's talk about be vulnerable. Now, some people think that being vulnerable means weak or powerless. You know, to me, being vulnerable is the opposite for me. Being vulnerable, it takes a lot of power. It is scary though. Why is it scary? Why is it scary to be vulnerable? Think about what we have to do to be vulnerable. We have to open up. We have to expose ourselves, be unguarded, be willing to share and expose our most tender and broken parts. So think about, for me, as a teacher, as a creator, as somebody that's sharing myself with the world, and for you as artists, you create something and then you put it out there for your clients to critique. You expose yourself and your work, and you are open to being hurt. How scary is that, right? You put your work out there, and this is when you're most open to being hurt. So being vulnerable is extremely risky. However, I would suggest that when you are vulnerable and you put your work out there and you expose your most creative and generous parts of yourself, your most open parts, is when you're also open to being cherished, valued, appreciated, adored, and seen. Most fully seen. Now, does that scare anybody? It could be terrifying. But I also think it could be electrifying and exhilarating and rewarding. Now think about a time when you have allowed yourself to be fully seen. You've seen you're allowed your art and your work and your creativity be fully seen. What did that feel like? At times it can be like your hands might shake, your lips might quiver, your legs might even feel unstable. Anybody relate to that? Yes, Hannah, again, the fear of failure, of failing, but what if you don't fail? What if it's liberating and you end up flying instead of failing? It takes bravery to be vulnerable. So you're first brave, and then you're vulnerable. You take the guts to open up and allow yourself to be seen. And it could be terrifying, but what if it's not? So you be brave, you be vulnerable. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How willing are you to be that egg on the edge? How much are you willing to let people in, to be seen? Are you putting yourself out there, letting people in unguarded? Or are you still keeping stuff pretty close to the vest? Rate yourself. And who are those fives of the people in your life that you know are putting themselves out there, willing to be seen? Who are those people in your life? And last but not least, be you. Now this to me, I know it may sound trite, like, oh, just be yourself. But think about this. To be yourself, it takes, first, you have to know yourself. The classic Duffy, know thyself. And it also takes the guts to be yourself and the willingness and vulnerability to be yourself. It's not as easy as it sounds to be you. And also somewhere around the age of 5, there's a psychological phenomenon that occurs that we start to put on the masks and I call it the poser syndrome of starting to be somebody that we're not. And it's just a society thing and a psychological phenomenon of trying to please other people and trying to be other people to make people happy. So over time, we put on layers and layers and layers of shields of being not who we are. If you think of, 5 and beyond, there's nothing like a child who's just completely authentic. The joy of unabashedly being ourselves somehow goes away over time. But just imagine being ourselves and fully being ourselves. I got to tell you, after 2020, nothing is certain anymore that we learned. And let's just drop the pretense. I mean, it's so much easier to be ourselves, but we have to have a journey there. And I have to tell you, my struggle, I mentioned, my journey to myself was not easy. I was a victim of multiple violent crimes. My journey included PTSD. I lived a life of being unseen and unheard. My journey, I wish there was a moment I could tell you that there was a lightning strike and I all of a sudden was like, I'm me. But it wasn't. My journey included pain, deep work, struggle, forgiveness, tears, joy. So it wasn't easy for me to be me. It took years to get to where I am today, which is why I am an authenticity advocate, because I didn't get to always be me. I can't tell you how important this is. And you may already be here. And so for me, they say, Diana, this is no big deal. Sharing your story and being yourself is one of the most important things you can be, because people know when you're not you. They know, they can sense it. And connecting to others is one of the most important things you can do in life, whether it be for business purposes or whether it just be for family or friends. Connecting with others is all that matters. So I invite you and I encourage you to begin your journey if you haven't, and to be relentless in your journey. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How true are you to you? Meaning 5, you are about as true as you can be. And 1 is, I got work to do on my journey. And again, none of these are right, wrong, or there is no right, wrong in any of this. And who is your 5 on just the biggest, most authentic person you know? Now, I want to tell you a story. In 2019, November 2019, I was in New York City with my team. And on October 22nd of 2019, I had an accident. I was in a brace, and 2 weeks later, I'm in New York with my team, and we are having a team meeting talking about what inspires us to be, we're all teachers, and what makes us good, and what inspires us to be teachers, and what makes us good about learning and teaching. And at this meeting, I was struggling. My PTSD was flaring very much because I'd just been in this accident and because I was in New York City. So I had survived 2 rapes, and my PTSD, I've struggled most of my life. So New York is a bustling city, and we had decided that we were going to walk a lot of the city. And so I knew that I had high anxiety. Lots of people, lots of noise. I knew I was going to be struggling. So we decided as a team, we were going to share insights about what made us good at being teachers. And one of the insights of my PTSD is the fact that I had high empathy. And particularly I was good at reading rooms because I was hypervigilant. I could read rooms and I could feel emotion. So I decided that I was going to share my story. I had never shared my story with my team before. And I knew it was going to take a risk to be this intimate with my team, but I knew that I needed to because I needed my team to be hyper aware of what I needed in New York. So I knew it was going to be a risk because I wasn't sure how they were going to view me. I didn't know. So I decided to take the risk. I told my team my story and I told it with my whole heart. I wasn't sure. And again, I knew it was going to be a risk, but I needed to tell my story. During my story, I shed some tears. I shared very much my heart, and I shared what I needed, that I needed them to stay close to me because I could have some fear and anxiety when we were out in the subway and we were out in places that were going to be crowded. And at one point, one of my teammates that I didn't know very well, I saw her, she was emotional when I was sharing my story, and some of my other team members were too. And she wrote something on a card and she slid it over to me across the table. And this is the card. Can you all see it? It says, "Your new word is brave." And I teared up and I broke down, and I have kept this card for over a year and a half because this means everything to me. What she did is she confirmed for me that it was brave for me to share, and she appreciated me sharing. And I still hold this dearly because what it did is I told my story with my whole heart. She acknowledged that it was brave for me to share my heart. And so I want to let you know that I encourage you to do the same. I encourage you to tell your story. My team backed me up our whole week in New York. They had my back, not only emotionally, but physically. So I encourage you to share your story, to be brave, to be vulnerable, and to be you, because it matters. So thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Okay, thank you, Diana. I didn't realize we were going to need tissues this early in the morning, but that was great. So right now, I would be hearing a thunderous round of applause. And since we can't unmute and cheer, let's show our appreciation by going into the chat right now, or anytime you want to cheer or applaud, and give me a round of applause by entering in exclamation points. That's right, just add exclamation points into the chat. That's going to signify applause in our virtual meeting today. Thank you. All right, let's turn the mic over to Duffy from House of Sorcery.
All right, perfect. Well, it's a tough one to follow. That was very well done. Thank you. I appreciate hearing your story and learning more about it. And yeah, all right. So my name is Duffy. I am, like Laura said, I'm a partner in House of Sorcery. I'm half of Electric Coffin. And basically what that means in a nutshell is that I am an artist for a living. I'm an artist naturally, and I've chosen to use that to sort of share that thought process in a professional manner. So as Electric Coffin, come on. You are connected. Brittany's screen. Oh, there we go. So as Electric Coffin, my partner Steph and I, our role as storytellers is artists, and we're crafting our own narrative through the work. And as a partner and creative director of House of Sorcery, Stefan and I work with our team to take that same set of communication, visual communication, and collaboration, and use that to work in the commercial space. So, you know, when you go to art school, they do a really good job of teaching you how to think differently, how to analyze, how to sort of critique, be exploratory, ask questions, and not focus so much on the act of making something, but more or focus more on the act of making than I guess the object itself. It's the object is the sum of a journey, and so that's really what as House of Sorcery, we're trying to bring that lens to the commercial space. So what they don't teach you in art school is how to apply that out, to the commercial world. How do you, as an artist, interject in different industries? And so House of Sorcery is a studio in which we're kind of trying to take what we've learned from art school and take our years of working, whether it's graphic designers, actually building in the built environment, working in the industries we're in, fabricating, and sort of bringing that all together holistically. And so our studio is based off 3 pillars, and those pillars are collaboration, viewing through an art lens, and then being a one-stop shop. And I guess when we say that, we've found that when you have creative intent and creative discussion and you're doing schematic design, and then that goes to a fabricator, and then that gets handed off to, sorry, I'm talking in the AD vernacular, but when that goes to a GC and it gets installed on the wall, there's several opportunities for that creative intent to morph and change and kind of be adapted without that intent sort of being advocated for through that process. So our studio is dedicated to being a place where we're multifaceted, that we can talk about strategy, we can talk about conceptual design, we can do design development and actually do the testing and prototyping of whatever creative we're pitching, and then produce and install that work. So, and I think that's really critical for our topic today, which is storytelling, because at the end of the day, our job with House of Sorcery is to meet with our clients, whether it be the built environment, whether it be a product collaboration, whether it be branding, if we're doing a marketing activation, we work in a myriad of industries, and understand not only our client, their narrative, the narrative for the project. It might be a special narrative that they're sort of putting out into the world, that's a branch from something that maybe people don't know about them, but really understanding and listening to their story, and then figuring out a way to work with them to actualize that typically into a physical experience. So whether it's going to be a permanent installation workplace, whether it's going to be an activation that's in a marketing activation, or it's an object that will go out into the consumer world, it's our job to help them tell their story. And as artists, our vernacular, our language, tends to be mostly visual and tactile. So the work we do, as you can see here, is all over the board, literally all over this mood board. We have, we're doing installations in dining and restaurants, so really trying to participate with those types of clients about experiential. We're working in workplace. Workplace is more important now than ever. I think there was already a trend pre-COVID of really having more human-based interaction, or humanistic design. Sorry, not human-based interaction, but humanistic design in the workplace. And so and now with COVID and sort of the shift of the workplace, that's been a big sector for us. And then, brand engagement, figuring out in a world where we are inundated with thousands of images a day, sounds, we live in a very loud world. So how do we create opportunities for our clients to connect with their I'm gonna say users. That's very computer based, but to connect with their fan base in a way that's as genuine as possible, noting that it's marketing. So obviously there's a slope there. And some of our work evolves from, two-dimensional environmental graphics to large art installations. Up to the right, you'll see that we have a map, working in the workplace, a good example of storytelling. Everybody wants a map and everybody wants a timeline. And so a big question in our studio a few years ago was understanding why people want maps and why people want timelines. What are they saying? It's a very specific sort of narrative exploration we did. And so it's become something that we really enjoy talking about with our clients, trying to understand beyond just showing all the locations on a map that they can point to and say, we're in all these places. What do those locations mean? What does that network mean? What does that mean to their brand, their story, their company? And then how do we show that in a different and unique way? Same thing with the timeline. For us, it's understanding company's history or a client's history, and how do we bring that in an unexpected way? I don't think we have, well, the small little guy in the middle, that's a vignette from a wallpaper. We're known for wallpapers. And so I'll give you a specific story right now. We're known for our wallpapers. It's something that we have developed over the years. Again, we like them because they're visual, but they're narrative driven. And so you can hide all kinds of details, and we call them Easter eggs, little fun tidbits about whoever the client might be inside these visual cues. And so it's a way that whether it's an old toile or a damask, they become a canvas for us to basically tell a client's story. And we like it because at first glance, people assume it's just a wallpaper that they maybe bought off the shelf. And then as you dive deeper, we like to reward curiosity. So as people really study the wallpaper, that story becomes alive and they can get deeper and deeper into that world. So those are the types of things that our studio is trying to do. Here's some more slides of work. So like on the left, that was a wallpaper we did for a restaurant. In the middle is a restaurant here in Seattle called Westward. We designed this boat back bar. And so I think cross-sectioning of function in art is a big part of our studio's ethos as well. We're actually just wrapping up another bar currently for another client that we've kind of taken over the entire backspace and created something completely new. But this one, our client basically was like, we want something behind the bar, and it was a kind of a Wes Anderson themed bar. And so we had this idea of a big aquarium and all these things, and then they just came back like, well, we have to put the booze somewhere. And so we watched Wes Anderson, and at the very end they zoom out, and the Belafonte is one big set, and we were like, that's the moment, that's it. So we did our version of that. So it's cabinets basically skimmed to look like a boat, and we built all these scenes, and it was great because we could tell the story of the restaurant. The tables had little telescopes so people could sit at their table and look at the boat. And on a commercial standpoint, we would always joke that the metric was that people would stick around for one more drink so they could continue looking at the boat. So we were able to double their sales. You got to be a business person as well as an artist. So the thing you're seeing on the right is, again, shifting. I think a big thing larger than just our work is just as creatives, I think it's important for us to show people that we are, creativity is a commodity. And through the age of COVID, we've been doing a lot of different types of projects than we've done in the past. The project you see on the right, we worked with Amazon to do a conference that's normally a 40,000 person conference or 30,000, so that we did entirely online. So we built all these sets and helped conceptualize what the look and feel is, and tried to do this simu-live conference that brought people together. So I think our job as House of Sorcery is to utilize art and design to have people tell their story through, like you said, sort of unconventional lens, visual, as well as and it can be anything in wayfinding, branded graphic, etc. Briefly, I'll touch on Electric Coffin. So this is Steph and I's collaborative artist work. A lot of the stuff that's in Electric Coffin, this is kind of the more like, if we looked at the studio as a cheese counter, you know, we have all the different like consumer cheeses. It's maybe House of Sorcery, some slightly stinky cheeses. This is like the stuff in the back that has mold on it. This is pretty ultra stinky cheese, hyper conceptual. You know, we are artists at heart, so we do a lot of really fun client work, and they stretch our boundaries. But so we like to take that into our personal work and try to bring. We think that cross pollination of what we're doing as Electric Coffin versus House of Sorcery is really important. So, in a nutshell, Electric Coffin, we refer to it as visual archaeology. It's really just an examination and exploration of sort of the cultural zeitgeist. Steph and I both come from similar backgrounds of, you know, street art, skateboarding, punk music, kind of just being your average 80s and 90s degenerate kids. And then how has that shaped us in the modern world? And, you know, as artists and as we're working with these bigger companies and kind of having this duality of lens, it allows us the opportunity to look at some, you know, pop sensibilities, collective consciousness, but also materiality. And so yeah, Electric Coffin is a lot more exploratory, but if you look hard enough, you'll see some continuing threads from our House of Sorcery work as well. And lastly, but not least, I know I'm a minute over, but public space is really big for us. Again, as storytellers, we feel like our commercial work, the hardest part for us is that it's relegated typically to a private space or a badged entry or someplace. I mean, that work's very important, but we're trying to offset that with doing more public work these days. So this has become a big part of us is accessibility and getting our storytelling out into the public realm so that people can see and not have to have the access that some of the other pieces have. So just some examples of some of our public work, and we're also crossing over the digital threshold. So again, trying to hack technology so that people can have access to the work in non-traditional. That's it. Hope I got everything.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes, great. Everyone, we can hear some applause by typing in those exclamation points into the chat to thank Duffy for his talk there. I love the concept of calling your art ultra stinky cheese. All right, now we have a brief intermission sponsored by Spec Systems.
Oregon IIDA. We are happy to be here today because we are passionate about what you do. Our role at Spec Systems is to help you understand what manufacturing can do so your projects can match your vision. What draws me to this field are the moments in my life when I needed something just perfect and unusual, and I found it. It makes you realize design impacts absolutely everything we do. Every door we open, every wall that surrounds us, every classroom we enter, someone like you created them all. My absolute favorite thing about my work at Spec Systems is saying, yes, we do have a product for that. Thank you, Oregon designers. Spec Systems would love to help you with your next brilliant idea.
Now I would like to turn over the mic to Daesha from Tusk.
Oh, I don't see the slide deck anymore. I'm curious if others do. Did it go away?
Here we go.
Right on. Cool. Hey, everyone. I'm going to request remote control access. We've got this. It's super weird just seeing me, so I'm going to look at all your beautiful faces. Hi, good morning. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Daesha Ramachandran. I'm the founder of a company called Tusk. We are a social change consulting firm. We work to bring forward more just and anti-racist systems in the world, and I'm going to see if I can advance the slide. Here we go. So at Tusk, we're inspired by this core principle that you never change anything by trying to fight the existing reality, right? To change things, we need to build new models that make the current one obsolete. And we firmly believe at Tusk that it's possible to make systems of oppression obsolete. We just need to build more models and newer models, right? That make sexism, racism, ableism unnecessary in the world. And we do that work through 3 core areas. So at Tusk, we're inspired by this principle, and we live through these 3 areas of our verticals, which is to reframe cultural strategy. So how are you in relationship with one another in your teams and your systems? To reimagine your systems as living systems, so looking at your structures as an ecosystem. And finally, in queering and subverting your products and services so that who you're about and what you're about centers justice and anti-racism in the work you do. That's how we play in the world. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about what storytelling has to do with all of it. So, but first, I would like you to grab a pen and a paper, and I'd like you to draw a banana. And as you're drawing a banana, just get comfortable with, like, I want you to be able to use your reactions or emoticons or use the chat function in a moment. And so when you've drawn your banana or you've imagined your banana, just throw up a thumbs up or let me know that you're ready to roll. Cool. I'll give a couple more beats. I'm curious how many of you drew something like this? Or when you imagined a banana, is this what you imagined? Yeah? Right. And you're not wrong. It is a banana. Well done. You've slayed the morning session. But more precisely, that's a Cavendish banana. It's actually one type of banana in the world. And I'm curious, and if we could use chat here, this would be super helpful for me to be a little more interactive. Why do you think we all drew the same banana? Monsanto, yeah. Familiarity, it's what we get sold. Ooh, okay, there's a lot of, oh, wow. Okay, I can't read that fast. Hold on a sec. It's the only one we have, lack of food diversity. It's what we see in the stores. Yeah, so you're queuing up some really important things. There's a lot of work that went into making sure that we saw this as the banana, right? It's what we get sold in stores. And for it to be the thing that we got sold in stores, what else had to be true? It means that our trade policies had to be the things that reinforce that that's the banana we get in stores. You can find other bananas. And if you, like me, grew up in a South Asian household, like we ate other bananas, but getting those bananas took a lot of work. And actually we were kind of disincentivized to find them. You had to go to the quote unquote ethnic grocery store or like the specialty store, the specialty aisle, right? They weren't going to be with the other bananas. They were the other thing, right? And we got, yeah, so storybooks, right? If anyone played Donkey Kong, I'm a child of the 80s. That banana that the Donkey Kong slipped on was a Cavendish banana. Where else does this show up culturally? So like if any of you are bakers and you like to bake banana bread, none of the recipes I've ever read say buy 3 Cavendish bananas of medium size. It says buy 3 bananas, use 3 bananas. Now, if you grew up in Hawaii and you eat apple bananas, which are superior bananas, if I do say so myself, you're going to have a really crappy banana bread, right? Because it's assuming and it's making assumptions about the type of banana you're going to use to make that bread, right? So even if you want to use a different banana, it takes a lot of work every day to have different bananas available to you, right? They are so good. See, someone knows about apple bananas. Beautiful. I'm also struggling with I have a wireless mouse and sometimes it stops working. Okay. So I want to invite you to think about the fact that the work of building a single banana takes work at multiple levels in our system, right? So in our work at Tusk, we work through the lens of systems thinking, right? To dismantle systems of oppression, you need to start recognizing that the work we do at an individual level is reinforced in all of these nesting dolls. So even if I individually want to have apple bananas in my house, I have to work very hard and I have to hope that a grocery store nearby might have apple bananas, right? At the institutional level, at the structural level, I have to hope that the trade policies in the United States incentivize us importing bananas from different places. so that I can have them. Right? So the work that we're working within, the structures we're working within are pronounced and they're profound and they continuously get reinforced. So much so that when I ask you to draw a banana, we just default to the same banana. Okay, so what's the connection to storytelling? Well, stories stabilize and create new norms, right? And so when it comes to changing our values and mindsets and our systems, stories are really foundational in that. So the banana is a narrative. And I want to talk about narrative and stories as distinct. Narratives are the accumulation of stories. They're the mythologies that we play into, right? That signal to us about the world and how it works. And our stories either contribute to them or they dismantle them and they build new ones. Because we live, if I can advance the slide, sorry, y'all, I'm a little janky with this. We've got 6 different mouses over here. We live in a narrative reality, right? Where stories shape power and power shapes stories. And there's a continuous dialogue between those two things. And one way that we can work towards a more just world, a more inclusive world, a world where there are many bananas to choose from and they're all well endorsed and validated, is to fundamentally change the dominant narrative, right? Those big, big pieces of the nesting dolls, so that we have more options, that there are more well-endorsed stories out there that are different from the one we've been handed. But it takes recognizing that, oh, the banana I notice isn't the only banana out there, right? So the first step in great storytelling and dismantling stories that reinforce dominant cultural norms is to notice whether or not you're having a banana moment in your stories. Is this a story that reinforces the values and tropes that I've inherited, right? Or does it do something else? For example, this is a narrative, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with it. America's a meritocracy, and anyone can achieve through ambitions and hard work anything they want, right? That's a narrative. That's a mythology that we have all inherited. And a lot of the stories we tell about ourselves either play into this or they challenge it. The important thing to know is that your story is never neutral. It's never not doing one of those things, right? You're either buying the Cavendish banana or you're looking for other bananas. But there's never like that's right, a banana moment, right? We talk about this all the time at Tusk. So we talk about this in the frame of white supremacy culture or cultural norms around, is this a banana moment? Is this something where we're not challenging our assumptions about what's true in the world? But narratives and the stories we tell play into these narratives. They tell us who belongs and who doesn't, right? Who is us and who is them? Who deserves something and who doesn't? Or they can get us curious and uncomfortable about subverting a narrative. So this is a story in a picture. But it subverts something I think we probably all notice, or if anyone here has gone to a nail salon, anyone get their nails done? Right? What we know in our bodies and our brains, if you've gone into any nail salon in most of the United States, is that the laboring force there tends to be East Asian or South Asian or immigrant, right? And so this subverts that narrative. And it can feel very uncomfortable to look at something that is not a Cavendish banana. So I'm curious to know, like, do an inventory in your body. Like, what do you feel when you see this? Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel like, ooh, that's not what I'm used to? And get curious, right? Same thing. So our stories, visual or narrative, like verbal, have the opportunity to challenge that narrative power that we've inherited, right? And every day that we tell stories, and we're always telling stories about ourselves, to Diana's point, to Duffy's point, right? We're always playing into some sort of narrative trope. So we have a lot of power in that regard, because that over time, the accumulation of our stories does something to a narrative. It changes the mythology we sit in, changes the systems, it changes the structures. It can also feel a little big, right? Because what I'm telling you is, hey, your stories have the power to like dismantle oppression. And I know that some of you on this call are like, wow, I haven't had my second cup of coffee. Slow down, right? So don't try to boil the ocean. But I want to offer a reframe on that ocean. Khalil Gibran is a writer, a Sufi writer and poet, is one of my favorites. And he once said, I discovered the secret of the sea in meditation upon a dewdrop, right? So I invite you to think about your dewdrop. What is in your sphere of control, right? What's yours to carry? Recognizing that you can shape the world by the stories you tell. Over time, you can influence the things beyond your control so that you change the things that are of concern to you. And I imagine if you're on this call, you're like me and you want to shape the world so it bends towards justice, right? And so you can do that, right? Focus on your dewdrop. Focus on what is within your sphere, but know that every time you tell a story, you place a tile in a mosaic, and it's yours to choose which mosaic you're placing into, because we're always playing in something. We're always building into a narrative. I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Daesha. That was really beautiful. Again, more exclamation points in the chat. I need tissues for a lot of this. It's super powerful stuff. Thank you, Diana, Duffy, and Daesha this morning for your presentations, and also for our sponsors, while we welcome Amber back for the Q&A.
Thank you, Laura. That was really powerful. I'm also kind of recomposing myself. Okay, so at this time, we are going to begin our question and answer portion of the event. If you have any questions for any of our speakers, Diana, Duffy, or Daesha, please go ahead and send them in the chat now. We've already received a few, so I'm just going to get started. All right, so first up, this is for any of the panelists. Can you share a time that you have had to push a client to be braver and not just take the safe, boring choice?
I can start with that. Yeah. Since I was preparing for it. So yes, in my role as in the sales enablement role, I do leadership coaching with the sales leadership and the executives of the Steelcase dealership in the top 75 dealerships in North America. So I often do one-on-one coaching and or group coaching. So I'm often challenging. I play the role of both support and challenge in a coaching role. And so a lot of that is about asking them to be brave, to have them reflect and do things, or have them reflect on things that they don't want to do, or have them challenging them to look at their maybe their lives or their actions, their maybe victories or areas of development that they don't want to do. So I often ask, I could use something like, if you knew you weren't going to fail, what would you do? Or if you knew if you were going to be courageous about something, what would you do? So challenging is a huge part of the coaching process, and the teaching process is having people look at actions, behaviors, maybe things that they wish they would have done, things that they did do and were they had victory, and asking them to reflect on it. And so a lot of it is challenging them. Now, sometimes they may say, well, I don't want to do it. And so again, I say, well, if you think you wouldn't, you couldn't fail or wouldn't fail, what would you do? And then challenging them to action. And then sometimes it's just doing it and then debriefing and looking at, well, what happened? How did it go? And encouraging them along the way. So a coach's role is a lot about challenging people, encouraging people to be brave.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Daesha or Duffy, did either of you want to touch on that, of how you've kind of worked with a client to be braver and kind of push those boundaries a little further?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot in our work about embodiment and somatic endurance. So when it comes to becoming more deeply anti-racist as individuals and leaders, folks who have historically held power don't necessarily have the endurance yet to like hold the space for the change and the discomfort. I think part of it is normalizing that that's a muscle memory that needs to be built over time, and that it's okay. We're like very, very distinctly anti-shame in our work, because shame it's not a particularly powerful tool for change. It's a very short-lived tool. And so much shame comes with the work of equity and justice in the world. Like, folks are afraid to not know what they don't know, and they're afraid to step in and interrupt patterns. And so part of our work is constantly coaching folks on the unlearning and learning out loud together, and that the bravery that comes with sort of that vulnerability that comes with learning out loud in front of folks.
Great. All right. Our next question is for Duffy. How do you help draw out your clients to share, like any strategies that you have to kind of pull out details so that your team can do their best work?
Sure. I'll give you a hybrid answer to that in the first question, because they're kind of one and the same. We kind of joke in the studio, but it's not really a joke, that a big part of our job is evangelizing, again, sort of the creative commodity, and the lens we look through, and the power, or the ability that has to bring something really meaningful and valuable to our clients. So we always tell them in the very beginning that the first presentation should scare them. We're going to throw a really wide net, and the point is because generally the feedback they give us is either really focused, which is good, but that means they're kind of looking through blinders, and we're trying to kind of open that up, or it's really broad because they don't know what they're looking for, and we help kind of give them lanes to put some of that feedback in. So for us, we have a myriad of tools, whether it's a questionnaire that we'll send out pre-project that asks some expected questions and some unexpected questions. Again, getting our clients to understand that the exploration part of our process is very, very important, and getting them on board for allocating some cost and hours on the front end to go through that exploration and that conversation and establishing that dialogue. And that's proven to be successful. The more clients and people we can get to engage with that type of activity on the front end, we find better results on the back end. And inevitably, it's always some offhanded remark that somebody makes in a conversation, whether it's getting them in the morning and it's a loose, lighthearted coffee conversation and they haven't had all their coffee, so they're just kind of shooting off the cuff. Or you get them, I hate to go into the tropes, but we do a lot of happy hours with our clients, and you get a couple drinks in them and all of a sudden the ideas start flowing. So we have an advantage. Our advantage is that typically our scope on a project our clients want to do, right? We're not talking about HVAC and mechanical and engineering loads and all of the quote unquote unfun stuff. We're talking about putting a 10-foot tall pink kitten sculpture in their lobby. And so we utilize their excitement to talk with us to kind of get them to open up a little bit more. And then we'll key in on those aspects for the project.
Great. Thank you, Duffy. All right, next question is kind of geared towards Diana and Daesha specifically. Diana, you talked a lot about being you, and Daesha about kind of looking inwardly in your own kind of sphere. So the question is about if you have any resources that you've used or that you could share about how to kind of become authentic, how to be your most authentic self. It's a big question.
I mean, we have exercises we use at Tusk as far as unearthing our values, which is a really core place to start, I think, around like what matters to me and how do I want to show up in the world. When I think about authenticity, I think about sitting in the integrity of my values in the world, right? Like, can I show up and really reflect the person I am, both committed to becoming and like the person I am today? And a useful tool, to be honest, is to think about the people in your life that you respect and admire and describe them. And think about the people, especially colleagues, like you've had trouble working with and what was like hard about that. And we usually use those. And then we ask folks, what are the 5 words you'd want folks to use to describe you? Who's the person you want to be out loud? And that can help get really clear on like what matters to you pretty deeply. Or it can trouble the waters about the banana moments you might be carrying. So for example, a lot of us as women might want to look nice, right? Because we've been socialized and it's part of the feminine identity in the world of like, we need to be nice out loud, right? It's like a little bit more of a socially accepted norm. Both are possible. One, you uncover deep values. You might uncover some myths you're playing into that you want to challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a values exercise is a great place to start if you haven't done any values. And I could probably send a link. There's lots of things you can do online. I also think it's just a basic one, but I still think the basic Simon Sinek start with why, really understanding why, your purpose. And he has a workbook that's Find Your Why, which is also just kind of like why, understanding why you exist, what matters to you is also just another great resource. But core values is definitely a huge part of it. So in order to be true to you, you need to understand what motivates you, so the core values is a great one. And just know that your core values, you'll have some basic ones that run through your life, but they'll change a little bit as you mature and grow. The other thing that's kind of a fun exercise is interview people in your life that you do work with and your close people about, like, when I walk in a room, or what do you know me for? When you think of me, what do you think of? When I show up, how do I show up in the world? It's kind of an interesting experiment to see whether or not the brand of you is how you want to be reflecting. It's sort of an interesting interview process, because that's the you you're projecting, and whether or not you're coming off. So, you do your brand, you do your value exercise, and then you interview people and say, how am I coming off? And then you realize if there's a disconnect, then you're not being authentic. So it's kind of I just recently did that just for my own kind of social media presence, just to see. I was trying to figure out words for myself to kind of, and it was very interesting because I felt like I was amazed I had clients, family, all kinds of people just to do it, just to kind of confirm. It was fascinating exercise. So basically, how you show up in the world.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. I think we have time for one more question, and it actually is a request for Duffy. We would love to hear an anecdote about a specific storytelling design challenge that you faced and ended up creating something super unique. Putting you on the spot.
Oh, sorry. I thought in my rambling, I saw that in the feed. I thought I answered. See if I can think of another one. I'll give you a good one. We did a piece for Facebook's office, and they gave us some starting points. They wanted, there was, I think, 3 or 4 things. Positive. They wanted positive affirmations. Hacker mentality is a trait they have there, and no digital. They wanted no digital displays or screens, because they're a tech company, and so they wanted the tactility to be a part of whatever art they were putting in their space. And so the way that we interpreted that is we created a sculpture. We recorded a quote into a phone. said, "Live like the future's on fire." And we took that quote, that recording, and we created an audio map. And then we took that audio map and we dropped it in to a graphics program and scaled it, or more of a CAD program, and scaled it to create a topography. And then we used that topography, and then we built individual spires that each had their own narrative. So each was a vertical story that matched the different levels of that topography, upwards and downward. And so from there, we created this shelf that kind of disappeared. And then instead of painting them, because they were talking about tactility, we actually flocked them. So it was it's like a velvet. I don't know if you remember like the old flocked wallpapers or your old He-Man toy was the purple. So we used flocking to coat the entire thing, and created this color spectrum that went across. And it created this sort of sound wave, and we referred to it as, it was a 3D analog representation of a digital sound. And so the idea for us was to try to push the concept and the messaging through as many different processes and mechanisms as possible to generate something that we could never have perceived on the front end if we were to only use one or even two processes. So it was an amalgamation of all of these different steps and processes, and reinterpretation as it went from, audible to visual to digital to analog, from 2D to 3D, from flat to textural, all of these things working together, and it created something completely unexpected. And I think that to date, that's probably one of our favorite installations. We also, again, each pillar is its own narrative. So as you get up closer, every pillar has its own story to tell, but they work collectively to spread one message, which is the giant quote, "Live like the future's on fire." So I think that by our standards as a studio and the work we do, that still feels as one of our most successful kind of applications of process. And we were fortunate to have a client who was willing to kind of really let us do something we had never done before and go wild. And it's not always the brief we get. So I'd like to point to that one as.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that, Duffy.
Of course.
All right. So we're coming to a close, to the end of our time this morning, but thank you all for your questions. And another big thank you to our speakers, Diana, Duffy, and Daesha. And now we would like to welcome our poet, Lisa Ann, who has been hard at work penning a poem to capture the essence of this morning's event. Hello, Lisa Ann.
Hello, everyone. This has been so fun. I mean, not to complain about past gigs, but getting to attend a design conference on storytelling is a lot better fodder for my poetry than some of the oil companies and the tech conferences and the eco engineering firms that I've had to do this for. So this is so fun, and your talks, our speakers, were just wonderful. So I think you'll recognize quite a few little Easter eggs in this poem. Maybe I'll just show you my banana too before I kick it off. Mine was half peeled. Tell me what the psychological meaning of that is. Okay. What if our mothers and fathers and the role models of our youth had really told us vulnerably the power of telling our truth? What would our homes and our families feel like with the pretense dropped? Every nook and corner electrified with our "Amen, sister, amen, brother." What if every wall rewarded curiosity, blossomed at your gaze, your touch, blessing you just for being there, just for surviving? Design is a feast, and we are starving for a taste of truth. Waxy meals will no longer leave their numbing film. We need brave taste, stinky cheese to linger on our tongues. We want to eat a purple banana. We cannot go back to tear down buildings erected with something less than bravery. We cannot relive a childhood not infused with collective, courageous consciousness. We cannot uneat 1,000 meals marinated in myopia. We cannot untell those comfortable, half-truthful stories. But we have the power to interrupt the narrator right now. And when we cook again, when we renovate, what new narratives will we create? And usually I do type when it's live, so I typed you a little message. I hope it's not mirrored.
Great.
Wow, thank you so much, Lisa Ann. I don't know about you guys, but I have chills right now. What a beautiful way to wrap up the event. Woo.
Sorry.
I'll type this up on my vintage typewriter and send you a high-res image that you can send out after the event.
Awesome. Yes, we plan to share that on our social media accounts. So everybody keep an eye out for that if you want more. Okay. Well, this brings us to the end of our event this morning. Thank you again for spending your morning with us. A portion of all of your ticket sales from this event are being donated to Your Street, Your Voice. So thank you for helping us support that organization. A final thank you to our speakers, Diana, Duffy, and Daesha. And thank you, Lisa Ann, for creating such a lovely poem to tell the story of our event. To continue our theme of storytelling, for our May forum, we'll be hosting an Amplify workshop where we practice telling our own story and advocating for ourselves as interior designers. More details to come, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, another big thank you to our sponsors who continue to allow us to provide such inspiring and informative programming. We look forward to seeing all of you again at more of our upcoming events. So thank you and have a good rest of your day.